All right, Daniel, it looks like that we've got several different directions that we can go
Mm-hmm.
with this.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is off into relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is, let us say, um, turning over the apple cart.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's also other ways of basing it, just upon what you've been talking about, including going off into wanting to teach the Dhamma,
Yeah.
and what I see in the future of that. But let's let that one hang off for a while.
Yeah.
The issue with the relationship, though, I'd like to give you, um, let us say, a very introductory course that you can begin to figure out, and then later we'll go into it in depth. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can get into apple cart turning.
Perfect.
All
Sounds good.
right. There is a sutta. It's sutta number 31 in the Dhamma Nikaya, where the Buddha is giving advice to um, lay followers. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in this sense, he's talking about lay followers who really are into the Dhamma, let us say, in the kind of way that you are,
Mm-hmm.
so that you perhaps are ready to hear this, but you may not perhaps be ready to put it into practice. So just throw it out there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that is this, that and we see this happening in Thailand very solidly. I can see absolute solid hard evidence in almost every family that this situation exists. I've even had people who came from the outside and talked about how the society of Thailand is different, and this is one of the things that they mention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Thailand is a matriarchal society,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's matriarchal partly because of the sutta that the Buddha gave, in the sense that the husbands, if they're going to be dedicated to the Dhamma, then do so and leave the house and everything that the wife cares about up to the wife. Let her be the boss of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Let her be the matriarch and the queen of her own palace,
Mm-hmm.
which means now you've got nothing left to do but to sit down and enjoy your life.
Well.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's basically the way that we practice. But Western men, they think that, oh, I've got to do something, or oh, I've got to be this, or I've got to be that. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But this
Mm-hmm.
Asian way is no, give the lady the power that she wants and the support she needs for that power and let her go.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, but then when we're talking about the support of like providing her with the support for this.
No, the support that I'm talking about is, oh, I'm really glad to see you come home.
Uh-huh.
And oh, wow, I really like your cooking.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
thank you for taking care of me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's the kind of support I'm talking about.
Okay. Okay.
The kind of support that they like to hear, that they're
Mm-hmm.
useful, they're valuable, we can't live without them.
That's for sure. Yeah. In my case, that's definitely true. Yeah.
And if you start treating her that way, your therapist won't see you so stuck anymore
Mm-hmm.
because you're willing to flow completely. Anything she wants, she can have, completely up to her.
Mm-hmm.
Before I ever realized that within Thailand, or even way before I actually found the sutta reference for it, I had known this in India,
Mm-hmm.
but I had known it through a book of proverbs or jokes called Mula Nasruddin. Have you
Okay.
ever heard of Mula Nasruddin? The word Mula, that gives it away immediately.
Mm-hmm. I
But
haven't.
there are hundreds and hundreds of stories in there. And one of the stories there is exactly the same story, that the guys come to him and they say, oh, Mullah, what do you do and what does your wife do? They're trying to find a way of of screwing him around or whatever. And he says, "Oh, I let my wife take care of all of the unimportant things. She only takes care of the trivial things, and I take care of the big things."
Mm-hmm.
And they question him about that, and he says, "Well, what do you mean all of the trivial things?" And he says, "Oh, the trivial things like what house do we live in? Where do we live? Who lives with us? What clothes I wear? What the furniture the house has? Um, where she goes to work? What she's got all of the discipline of the children. Whatever she says, that goes for the kids. That they can't come and ask me anything. That whatever she says goes. And I really like her and appreciate everything that she does because she's a big, strong, powerful lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she can handle all of the trivial stuff." And then they said, "Well, what do you take care of then? If you want to take care of important things?" And he says, "I take care of things like what is the meaning of this?
Mm-hmm.
What is God?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, why is why? You know, these are the kinds of questions that he thinks is big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the little stuff we let the wife do. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another way of you beginning to see it. Oh, let your girlfriend do. I mean, it's she wants to do it anyway. She really does want to run your life, and your life is really not all of that important. That we're going to do the really important stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and for sure that's already kind of how I relate to it because we bought this house here about 2 years ago now, and indeed, it's as you say, she really enjoys, decorating it, and I do like she's in charge of it, and I'm like she's also much better at it. So this part, I think, is already working quite quite well. But when you say give her what she needs, what she wants, there's still a bit missing in the sense that she would really like, and this of course makes total sense, to spend time with me and to spend quality time with me, and for me to also come up with interesting things to do together that we don't just by default, okay, we have some time together, let's sit into the couch and watch Netflix every time. To have some quality time, and this is where I get how should I put it? Where I get stuck, where I get confused, because I also have a lot of other things going on. I have my career, my job, which I'm actually not too happy about. I don't find it too fulfilling. I'm working as a software engineer right now for a startup, but it's yeah, very yep, just it's not working out for me. I would like to have more. I'd like to be in touch with people more. So at some point, I started volunteering for Red Cross to become a first aid responder. So I'm also doing that for a few hours here and there. And then, I've been thinking, how can I organize my job life, my career in this way that I can have some time next to it, that my job gives me enough fulfillment, satisfaction, energy, so that I can have this time outside of it to dedicate to my family, to dedicate to the Dharma, to dedicate to my girlfriend. And I haven't really found a solution for that yet. So what I found is I would really enjoy working with people. I really enjoy working with the mind, with suffering. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I need to go more into the direction of psychology. So this year I started doing an evening class in clinical psychology. So that's also added to the list of all the things I'm doing in my spare time because I don't really find my job very
What
fulfilling.
spare time?
Yeah, good question. Indeed, indeed. What's spare time? Yeah. So you see, I want to give her what she needs, but at the same time, what she needs is just a bit more time, a bit more. And I'm not sure how I can do that at this point. Um, Without
Well,
basically being.
one of the things you could do is you could say instead of uh, Instead of giving your time for charity, like with the Red Cross,
Mm-hmm.
you could give her that time
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that 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 you seem to be spread very thin,
Mm-hmm.
looking for love in all the wrong places.
Mm-hmm. That's an
But
interesting way to put it. I mean, the spreading thin part was quite clear, but looking for love, because to me it feels like I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to, to be useful to the world, to be, to be helping people, it's spreading love and not looking for it.
it takes a long slog through to figure out that you can't.
Okay,
You can't help anybody.
I can't
The
help
best you
anybody.
can do is show the students where the tools are that they need to pick up so that they can fix their own mind, but you can't do it for them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that's possibly the number one issue that all good Dhamma teachers have to resolve.
Okay.
In fact, the right thing to do is just enjoy the students without
Correct.
any expect. Just enjoy the students. You don't have
Okay.
to expect anything from them.
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
Sometimes we have to put the student in the right context,
Mm-hmm.
but that's often just a matter of defining our terminology so that we understand what we're talking about. That the teachings of the Buddha are actually quite simple, but the
Mm-hmm.
way that they get delivered is in a very, very complex situation. And when you add various Mahayanas on top of whatever's left of the Theravada, you wind up with a lot of variety of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that much of it goes by the numbers. So you've got uh, uh, the four of this and the four of that and the five of this and the five of that and the seven of these and the eights of those and the nines of this stuff and 12 of that and 16 of them things, and it just goes on and on. And then there's also two, and then there's one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so in that regard, these things are good to help remember so that we can cover the bases. But basically, the Dhamma is just one thing, and that we take it apart and so that we can understand it complete. It's almost like a clock. A clock is just a clock, and it just does tick tock, and the arms move, and you can tell the time, and that's all there is to it. But when you're first taking a clock apart, it feels like it is extraordinarily complicated in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really. Not
Yeah.
after you get used to it. It's just, one thing. Okay. So the Dhamma is like that also. And yet very few students ever get to the point of seeing that it's just one thing. It's
Mm.
got a purpose. And that the Buddha said it like this, both formally and before, I teach only one thing,
Mm.
and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha.
Yeah.
And so everything then that we teach here is revolving around that one point.
Mm-hmm.
And that anything that doesn't really fit into that well doesn't really belong, except that I can't find anything that doesn't.
Uh-huh.
Everything is about dukkha, dukkha
Mm.
nirodha. And so this is the basic teachings of the Buddha.
Mm.
And that there was a time when he figured this out, that was an important time uh, that he put together the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path, but he had a lot of that stuff also. He also began to understand how the mind worked, which
Mm-hmm.
gives rise to what we call paticca samuppada or paticca samuppada, and how the body mind complex kinds of works. In other words,
Yeah.
what he figured out was what is it like to be human?
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to what are we like when we don't quite be human, we act more like the animals that from which we came, or if we're
Mm.
acting instinctually versus with the higher mind of a human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this is the way that he started to put it together, and that along the way, very early along the way, he stumbled across the phrase that winds up being a really important clue or key to how to practice. And that was when he says, aha, I know you, Mara. Aha, I see
Mm.
you, Mara. All right, because that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what we need to start practicing in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of seeing the stuff in our mind, seeing the hindrances, because when we can see them like that, we can separate ourselves from them.
Mm.
Before the Mara, I was the Mara. I was it. I am my thoughts. I am my feelings, is the way that we are when we're stuck in that kind of a sleeping. Uh, but when we wake up, then, aha, I draw myself out of that and see that I'm now the observer, seeing the dukkha or seeing the Mara without now being the Mara. So we've intentionally added a duality that actually destroys the quality of the self that was built into the original system,
Mm-hmm.
because I am not that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I see you, Mara, now also fits perfectly well in with the Anapanasati.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk about Anapanasati in great detail to you if you really want to hear about it, but it's actually a marvelous sutta.
Mm-hmm.
And it is quite complicated, but when we understand it correctly, it winds up being just a piece of cake.
Mm.
It's based upon the four foundations of mindfulness, which
Mm-hmm.
is body, feelings, mind, and mind's objects.
Yep.
And that in that mind area, which is step number 9, 10, 11, and 12 in the Anapanasati, is this
Mm-hmm.
quality of gladdening the mind,
Mm-hmm.
making the
Mm-hmm.
mind bright, making it sharp, making it happy. And that phrase of, aha, I see you, Mara, is an exact um, let us say, example of that step 10 of wakening the mind up in the joy of, aha, I see you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before
Mm-hmm.
I was stuck in there, but now I'm not. I'm out
Mm-hmm.
of it. Okay. And that
Yeah.
has that quality of gladdening the mind, brightening things up. And this is actually the coming out of the hindrance.
Mm-hmm.
And that this joyousness is why the stages of rapture and sukha, or piti and sukha,
Mm-hmm.
uh, this is the joy that is arising because we are free from the hindrances that used to bind us down.
Mm-hmm.
And so this little bit of hit of joy every time we wake up, that's what we begin to work with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That joy or that feeling of success.
Mm-hmm.
So this little process of anapanasati also follows directly along with the Eightfold Noble Path,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that we start with one's right view that eventually becomes noble, and that the noble view is, first off, that it's better to have the mind cleaned out than it is
Mm-hmm.
to have it full of hindrance. That's our view. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
with that view, then the next thing is right sati. To
Mm-hmm.
develop right sati means that this is what needs to be practiced over and over and over again to get the mind basically fit for work, to wake it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Once we wake it up, that's when we say, uh-huh, I see you, Mara. But that aha, I see you, Mara, is also part of one's right action,
Effort. Yeah.
one's right effort. Exactly. One's right effort is to wake up happily rather than wake up and say, oh, meditation is so hard. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
monkey mind, because that's not actually waking up.
Mm-hmm.
That's staying right back into the hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
When we wake up, we're going to make a change. We're going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some sort of a bugle call in there. And
Yeah.
that bugle call is basically that, I see you, Myra. Wakey, wakey. Let's look at this stuff, okay? And then that wake up is um, the whole predicate for gaining the mind into a state that is referred to as samadhi,
Mm-hmm.
or is also referred to as first jhana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that this first jhana is actually the marvelous place to be rather than any of the higher jhanas,
Mm-hmm.
because this one needs to be put under control so that you can control going into it, control doing it, and control coming out of it. But
Okay.
this jhana has five factors to it. And the first factor, which is the important one, is seclusion from hindrance. We have to wake up. Aha, I see you, Mara. That throws the Mara, or throws the hindrance out, as well as it leaves us with a state of satisfaction. And when we're practicing it more, it leaves us to a state of feeling very good because we were successful at catching the mind and throwing the hindrances out. That's a score.
Mm-hmm.
And we're keeping score.
Okay. Okay.
We're going to be start keeping score. We're going to say, "Yep, got rid of it that time. Yep, got rid of it that time too." Okay, so we're going to begin to feel good about the fact that we can clean the mind out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is part of one's right effort.
Mm-hmm.
There is another aspect of one's right effort, and that is the aspect of the breathing.
Mm-hmm.
To come back to the breath. And in Anapanasati, the first step of Anapanasati is the long breath.
Mm.
Most people don't practice well enough in the sense that they think that, or even their teachers say that, just getting or just being aware of your breathing. You don't have to do anything with it. Don't try to control it.
Yeah.
No, no, that's not the teaching of the Buddha. The teaching of the Buddha is we're going to start controlling it in the sense that if we lose control over it, then that loss of control is also the loss of mindfulness. If we're just merely watching it without controlling it, then the mind will wander right away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're already turning over quite a few apple carts, just to let you know.
I told you would.
Yeah. Like, yeah. The teachings I've been mostly involved with seem to be more like passive, whereas you take a very active stance. You know, like we can control the mind and we should control the mind. So
And
far, I've been
we
more
do.
like, hmm?
You're right. You're exactly right. This is a very right effort. We've got to put the effort in.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
got to put the effort in. If we don't, then it's. Let me give you an example. This is one of my favorites. Imagine that you're standing on a road and a big truck is coming right down the road, a big lorry. Here it comes right on you. What are
yeah.
you going to do?
Jump aside.
Well, if you are in fact the kind of person who's not putting enough effort in
Hmm.
into meditation, then you're going to just stand there and let
Yeah,
the thing run over you.
yeah.
Whether you saw it or not is not important. In fact, may even been better if you weren't even paying attention. Just let it hit you, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
uh, the other way would be too much effort, which is the analogy would be Popeye with his can of spinach standing in the road with his fist out, thinking that he's going to stop the lorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But the right way to do it is just stand aside.
yeah.
Okay. So fighting with our mind, fighting with our thoughts, that's Popeye. We're trying to change it. And the other one is just to let it roll right over us over and over again. That's not taking enough right effort. But we have to take just the right effort. And that right effort is the aha, I see you. I'm getting out of the way. And
Yeah.
that's it. And that gladdens the mind, but it is an effort. Taking that
Mm-hmm.
deep breath is an effort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And with that, we're beginning to wake up the body.
Mm-hmm.
Really want the body to become alive and awake. There's a lot of different, let us call them intermediate for a while, uh, um, games, activities, etc., like that, that I give students so
Yep.
that they can begin to wake up
Yep.
all throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
Much of this comes actually out of the Satipatthana Sutta.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that we need to take a change of reference from that the practice that we put in is on the cushion, that
Mm-hmm. Yep.
everything has to do about the meditation hall. And if I don't do it in the meditation hall, it doesn't happen.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That's the normal way of people looking. And they have the idea that if they sit there long enough, then something good's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so they put in 3,000 or 30,000 hours, hoping that the karma machine in the sky is going to waltz in there, do Shaktipat on them, and then they're going to be happy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
It,
happen that way.
yeah, I find it so weird when you see Western teachers and they then say like, oh, I have 10,000 hours of meditation or 20,000 hours of practice. I mean, yeah. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Yeah. Yeah.
And well, if they're counting, that means they're not getting much out of it. And so um, the part of the apple cart upset then is to change our frame of reference out of a long-term process
Mm-hmm.
into things that are always going to happen right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Never mind about the past and never mind about the future,
Mm-hmm.
other than growing confidence that if we
Mm-hmm.
keep doing this over and over and over again and see that it works over and over and over again, we begin to get great confidence. The
Mm-hmm.
Pali word is swatta. Does
Mm-hmm.
not mean faith. It means I know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And that one of the most important points then would be, and the Buddha calls this the first knowledge, which is actually the first step of the Noble Path, is that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, no
Mm-hmm.
matter how much frustration or whatever it is that the mind can fiddle with, that we, when we wake up with sati, can clean the mind out, throw all of that out, come back to the present moment, and see the reality of the situation as it is right now.
Mm.
It then says this is the first knowledge that is noble, super mundane, a factor of the path,
Mm-hmm.
and not shared by ordinary people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That super mundane part, or the Pali is Lokatara,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
also is translated as transcendent.
Mm-hmm.
But a better way of thinking about it is just hands off.
Mm. Hands off.
Hands off.
Okay.
Hands off. What do I mean? If we're attached to the world, then we're clinging like this.
Uh-huh.
But if we are Lokatara, if we are above the world, then hands off.
Mm. Mm.
We're above the world. There's nothing to grasp or cling to now because we're
Yep.
above it all.
Yeah.
Okay? This
Okay.
is what is meant by Lokatara.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how then is this little practice Lokatara? The answer is that because you in fact have let go of the hindrances that were keeping you attached to the world in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and now that you have let go of that, you are now Lokatara. So every time you do that, every time that you do it, you gain more and more confidence that you can do it next time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that then some hindrances are going to come by to test you so that you can really begin to flex your muscles. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, like without doing too much on it, let's just say that you will begin to have the ability to have the attitude and the feelings that you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
let's not go with that too far, but let's just take it now and put it under great stress. So
Uh-huh.
here you are bopping along, feeling the best way that you know how, and feeling really good. And here the cop comes up,
Mm-hmm.
and he starts questioning you, and then he handcuffs you, and now he's
Mm-hmm.
taking you to the station.
Mm-hmm.
Now your hindrances are really there.
Yeah.
Are you now the mind's going to be strong enough to say, never mind, I can handle this perfectly well.
Uh-huh.
I do not have to feel bad. I can feel the way that I want to feel, even while I'm getting arrested.
Yeah. 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 I know.
And now,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
I was taking a bike ride yesterday with my father, and at some point it was starting to rain, and my back tire got flat. So we stopped, we pulled over, and I guess I must have been a bit frustrated by this. My father goes like, "Who's the Buddhist here, you or me?"
Wakey, wakey.
Perfect. Yeah, so this is what you're talking about.
This is exactly what we're talking about. Yes, can we handle those tough situations? The answer is darn tootin' I can.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
I can remember. Okay, so that's the attitude that we're looking for, the attitude of being, and the Buddha uses the example of a lion,
mm-hmm,
but I often use the word winner, but sometimes I'm
mm-hmm.
challenged on using the word winner.
Okay.
The quality is that, hey, I can handle this.
Mm-hmm,
Hey,
mm-hmm,
I can do this. Why? Because I've been practicing over and over and over again. And when I need that sati, it's going to be there. And I can practice these skills of right effort, right attitude,
mm-hmm,
coming out of right view.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Okay, so this is basically where we're going, but it needs to be practiced over and over and over and over and over again.
mm-hmm.
And so say, yes, I do that over and over and over again. I do that 1 hour a day sitting on the floor. And I say, oh, yeah, that means 23 hours a day you're just lost in space, huh?
Yeah. Exactly.
So that means that we need to begin to take the practice out of the context of being in a secluded environment
Mm-hmm,
and putting it into the work of living.
mm-hmm.
That I often ask students, do you really want to spend 9 years in the cave like Bodhidharma?
No, no,
Nobody wants to do that. No, no. Everybody
no,
wants to have a good, happy, enjoyable life.
no.
And so that's actually then what we're going to practice for.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
for
Makes
good
sense.
and when we see how enjoyable and how fantastic it can be, then we get to the point of really wanting to share this with others. This is good stuff.
Yeah,
And is worthy of giving out, giving freely.
yeah. See, that's the thing. I kind of seem to have skipped a step somewhere because I already, at some level, I know this is good stuff and I want to be sharing it, but I'm not applying it myself yet. So that's like where am I yeah, going wrong there?
Okay. Well, I recognize that in some ways I'm 2 steps, if not 2 miles ahead of you.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
yeah.
um, we, but we have a place to start, and we
Mm,
have also the understanding of where we're going with this.
yep.
That
Yes.
there is something really marvelous out there. That it's not magic. That it's
Yep.
real stuff. Can be actually done, and that it really is not hard to do. Really, all it takes is to remember to do it.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's
Yep.
all it takes is to
Yep.
keep remembering over and over and over again to come out of one way of saying it is to come out of our personality and be who we want to be.
Mm, mhm.
And
Yep.
always the choice is yours. Can we remember to come out of that old
Mhm.
personality? Because you are not bound to your personality, which
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
actually quite ferocious for most people to understand that who you mean I'm not me? I'm yes, that's right, you are not you. Why?
Yeah.
Because who you think you are um, is is something fixed in your mind, But who you really are is malleable.
Mm-hmm. I think this right here already is a very good point for me, because I don't feel like I have a very fixed personality, but I feel like I've been, for like the past 10 years or so, been searching for what's my personality, what's gonna be my, like, I need to find it somewhere, you know, and
All right.
yeah.
Well, let's look at that then, because we've already been talking about the Eightfold Noble Path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The Eightfold Noble Path actually has an element on it which is called Sama Area Samadhi that most people really don't understand,
Okay.
because Samadhi is often, too often, translated as concentration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But Samadhi normally means like a yurt with a center pole,
Mm-hmm.
so that, or a teepee, to where you have
Yeah.
one point at the top,
Yeah.
and that's the Samadhi point, which means the gathering together of all of the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we are going to then gather together the elements that are needed to put the mind in a fit state,
Mm-hmm.
then those would be the elements that we'd want to keep gathering together and working on gathering those elements together.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Another way of looking at it is, okay, well, let's start defining what it would be like then if your mind had been gathered together, and the Buddha calls this a unified mind,
Mm-hmm.
a mind that is unified.
Yeah.
We can think of it in the sense of being a statesman, or in the sense of having no conflicts of interest.
Okay.
Another way of looking at it is that we don't believe any of the lies that we've been told, nor do we repeat them.
Okay.
That we're dedicated to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That lying, in fact, is a way of having a divided mind,
Uh-huh.
divided between the truth and the lie.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one would be into the kind of feelings that you would not want to have. For instance, anger,
Uh-huh.
sadness, jealousy, fear. These are the kind of feelings that you would not expect to have in a unified mind, because those are the things that separate us and take us apart, especially things like grief and sadness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because what we're saying is, oh, I have been separated from that which was dear to me. Oh, poor
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pity part time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But when we can lose something without um, having the consequences of the loss from it, then that's when we can keep the mind unified. So doubt would be another thing that would keep the mind from being unified.
Yeah.
So when the mind is free
Yeah.
from doubt, is free from lies, is dedicated to the truth, we got quite a
Mm-hmm.
list here that keeps the mind unified.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of it then has to do with sila,
Mm-hmm.
which sila then is actually, in the way that I'm describing it here, the tail end of the Eightfold Noble Path. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't belong at the beginning, nor does it belong in the middle, but it belongs in the end, because then it's the result of one who
Mm-hmm.
has a noble mind. When the mind is unified and noble, and one is free from desire, free from wanting things, free from conflicts of interest, then naturally his sila is going to be top quality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Why? Because he doesn't. I mean, why should I bother to get in the truck and go to town and go shoplifting when, in fact, I don't want anything?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So, uh, and so it's more of a natural cause and effect,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
we do not become enlightened because we're being a goody two shoes.
Yeah.
But when we are enlightened, we wind up being a goody two shoes anyway.
Yes.
um, with that unified mind now, we can understand this is the completion of the path, is to bring ourselves to that. But now let's look at the various qualities of that. And one, as you'll see, is that kind of mind that is unified is free from all of the hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
It does have satisfaction. It does
Mm-hmm.
have success. It is free from fear. So it feels secure.
Mm-hmm.
And if the mind is sharp and fit for work, then you have both the way of applying the mind and sustaining it. And voila, you've got the five factors of the first jhana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you could actually think of this unified mind is the mind when it's in the state of first jhana.
Mm.
So all we need to do is continue to develop the mind into this state of first jhana over and over again, learn how to get it to sustain itself in that state of first jhana. And that's freedom from suffering. Why? Because
Mm.
it's got sukha built in, and sukha is the opposite of dukkha.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a state of satisfaction, where's the dissatisfaction?
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And this is actually the path of the Buddha that's laid right out in the suttas, but few people quite understand it from this perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The, have you ever heard of the story of the rose apple tree?
Not sure.
All right, that there the Buddha was at some age, possibly 14 to 16, sitting
Uh-huh.
under the rose apple tree and experiencing the joy of first jhana.
Mm. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did the Buddha have that recollection? When he was
Yeah.
calling out of the fast moving stream.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
As he was calling out of the creek, he realized he was so emaciated that he couldn't get out of the stream. How could he get himself out of suffering in general?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, so that's when he recollected and said, "Why then I am I afraid of the joys and pleasures
Mm-hmm.
of the sukha of first jhana?" And
Mm-hmm.
then he says, basically, in the old Pali, I don't remember it is, but in the English, it translates into "by gum and glory." The path of the to enlightenment is the path of the first jhana,
Mm-hmm.
and that's right there in the suttas.
Okay.
It's in Sutta number 36. It's
Okay.
packed with magic, but that's the whole point. If we can get our mind into the state
Uh-huh.
to where we can control it,
Mm-hmm.
that we can be in a state of satisfaction and joy and go about living our lives like that, thinking the kinds of thoughts that we want to have, what other kind of life do we want anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this first jhana is, in fact, a way of getting the mind into that unified state, and it's not really that difficult to do.
Mm. May I ask two questions
Sure.
to start with? So the point is to then be in first jhana basically all the time?
I don't like that word all the time. So let's
Mm.
rephrase it into every time you can think of it.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I don't even know what all the time means.
Mm. 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 Yeah. And then a second one I've been struggling with on a logical or rational level, so that's probably not the right level to look at it, is dissatisfaction, sukha, is it even possible without dukkha? Like, can you be happy? Can you cultivate this happy mind the entire, well, like, there I go again with all of the time, but
Right.
yeah.
So let's get down to this present moment.
Yeah.
If and one of the ways that I express it is in the sense of walking across a farmer's field that is full, not full, but it's a cow pasture, and all the cows are way over on the other side of the pasture.
Uh-huh.
To get over to the cows from this gate where we are standing,
Uh-huh.
there are literally thousands of cow pies. You know what a cow pie is, right?
Uh-huh,
It's
yeah.
can you get from this edge of the pasture over to the cows without stepping in a cow pie?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
The answer is, if you watch where you're going, probably yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
just gave you your life story.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Can you get across your own pasture without stepping in your own crap?
Mhm. We'll see, we'll see.
All right. So how does that then relate back to the question that you asked? The answer then is that if you can see dukkha,
Uh-huh,
then you can avoid it
uh-huh,
rather than swapping or stepping in it.
uh-huh.
You
So the
can
point,
see it.
yeah. So,
Yeah, so that's the whole point about life is you really do. In fact, this is why the first noble truth is there is dukkha. The Buddha really intends to slap people in the face and say, "Wake up! This is your first noble truth already. Wake up to
yeah.
the fact that there is this unsatisfactoriness that's built into life."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then he begins to say, and how we wake up is not to all the cow pies in the pasture, just the ones where you're about to step.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting, yeah, very interesting way of looking at it. Hmm. Gonna be working on that one for quite a while, I think.
Well, that puts it back to this present moment.
Mm-hmm,
Everything is, and that's what upsets the apple cart mostly.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
More than anything else, is taking this time frame reference out of it. That
mm-hmm,
this year I do A and next year I do B. And oh
mm-hmm.
no, you don't. You do A, now you do B, now you do A, now you do B.
Yeah.
And so we can say it like this: that imagine that you go to a piano teacher, and this year she says in her old Dutch accent that this year we're going to play the note C.
Mm-hmm,
And you're going to get very good at C. Next
mm-hmm,
year,
mm-hmm.
you come back and we're going to play D with it.
Uh-huh.
And 3 years, you'll get three notes: A, B, C.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that that student's going to get anywhere? No. Every student needs to have every note available to him right from the get go.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so what that does then is that it changes it out of an organized of reference into a natural frame of reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That,
But you don't know what note you're going to need next, so let's make sure that we know where each one of them is.
yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And it always has to do with right here, right now,
Mm-hmm.
right where we are. That's
Mm-hmm.
the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, uh, in a way, um, it's kind of a misnomer to talk about it in the sense of uh, path to Sotapan
Mm-hmm.
and the fruit of the Sotapan,
Yeah.
because it's actually possible for an individual to move up and down the continuum
Mm-hmm.
over a short period of time or a longer period of time. That they can
Mm-hmm.
get stuck while at step four, and then they can move to seven. And in fact, seven and four together work really well.
Mm-hmm.
Four by itself is not so great, but when you add seven in, and I'll tell you all about that, what that means later. What I'm getting the idea for you is uh, that the mind is all over the place,
Uh-huh.
and our progress is also often all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And so we can't say, well, I've gotten to, like in, I think it's TMI or some book, they
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, I'm at step level 8 or I'm
Yeah.
at 9 or
Yeah.
whatever like that. To where no, generally the students are going to be all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very interesting because indeed I have TMI on my bookshelf along with a lot of other books, and I've started it 2 times I think, and I always get stuck in it's like, okay, but this is so formulaic, so organized, structured, it doesn't really feel right, but then I end up not doing anything at all and not moving in any direction. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense to just get all the notes in there and then see how to How to play the song.
Okay. Knowing that, though, how does one write a book that's intentionally disorganized? Any organization that you put the book in is going to wind up being taken in that organizational way.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's really hard to write. And possibly one of the better ways of doing that is by doing it as a novel or a narrative rather than as a how-to book.
Okay.
So you do the more Hermann Hesse model or the more Richard Bach model rather than the various modern Dhamma teachers.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like Thich Nhat Hanh also has a book on it, Old Path, White Clouds, which I also haven't started yet, but it seems like it's the same approach. It's about like a narrative about the life of the Buddha instead of an actual manual. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So to upset your apple cart then is what we have done today by but we haven't really gone that deeply into Anapanasati. But we have talked about the Eightfold Noble Path fairly quickly, knowing that, and here's something a lot of people don't know. They learn all about the Eightfold Noble Path in some lecture, and then they practice meditation, but they don't even recognize that what they're practicing in meditation is this very Eightfold Noble Path.
Yeah.
And so popping it in place and giving it its direct way of looking at it gives us a better overall understanding of that this practice that the Buddha has is actually a unified practice. We're just looking at it from various angles or whatnot like that. And so that we practice the Eightfold Noble Path by practicing Anapanasati. But we practice Anapanasati then for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana. And then we practice the Satipatthana then for the fulfillment of the Eightfold Noble Path, but we do it in the sense of the 7 factors of enlightenment. A lot of students don't know that the 7 factors of enlightenment are nothing more than the fulfillment of the Eightfold Noble Path.
Okay. I saw them more like a way to get there, in the sense that you have the more you have the mindfulness as kind of the the overview, and then you have 3 of them on the side of generating more energy, and 3 on the side of generating like bringing peace. So I saw them more like, okay, depending on what situation you find yourself in and the mind is in right now, you might either need to develop joy, or you might need to cultivate a bit more, tranquility, peace, concentration. That's
I don't see a difference.
Okay.
Yes, in fact, how can you have peace without joy?
Hmm.
That this is the order that they are in the listing in the Anapanasati Sutta of the 7 factors of enlightenment, but they're also in several other places, including the Satipatthana Sutta, to where it's, and the key word is the word unremitting.
Okay.
Unremitting is a word that does not mean continuous.
Okay.
It means continuously coming back or continuously reappearing. Here's a good example of that. Imagine that my hand is a head of a drum, and that my fist was the mallet of the. Okay, is this the way to play a drum?
No, you need.
Let me demonstrate that again. Okay, is this the way to play a drum?
I understand. No. You need to keep
Okay,
repeating.
how about this?
Yeah, of course.
Right. This is unremitting. This is unremitting, okay? And this is not unremitting. This is something that we're not going to be working with. We need
Mm-hmm.
to work with unremitting, the coming back. The
Mm-hmm.
sati keeps coming back. We understand that the hindrances are going to be there. That's your natural state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to come out of them every time we think of it.
Yeah.
They keep coming back, unremitting, in fact. And
Yeah.
when when our mindfulness becomes unremitting, then our ability to investigate becomes unremitting.
Mm.
And when our ability for mindfulness and investigation are unremitting, that's when the effort that it takes to do this is almost spring loaded now. That
Mm.
is almost no effort at all. You're just
Mm.
in it. Okay. And with that is then the unremitting piti. Now,
Uh-huh.
here, piti is actually used in the sense of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only then that you would have, after the unremitting joy, that you're going to have unremitting equanimity.
Okay.
Okay. The joy comes first. If you cannot
Mm-hmm.
create joy, then uh, like joy is the feather bed that you lay down on rather than the
Mm-hmm.
bed of spikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we have that. This is the way that is practiced, and that I don't know whether this is so much of an issue of Asian Buddhism, but it seems to be an issue of Western Buddhism because of the Christian and Catholic influence
Mm-hmm.
over life itself in this business is part of the society. You don't have to go to their church or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
be part of the society that basically says that life is shit,
Yeah.
that things
Yeah.
are screwed up. You've got
Yeah.
original sin. That whole
Yeah.
idea of original sin is built right into uh, the society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then we can wake up and say, original sin? No, nope.
Can't find it.
Can't find it. Not there.
Yeah.
Right. So, um, that's actually a major change in attitude that is part of the waking up process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That life is not stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there's another expression: life sucks, and I
Mm-hmm.
like that one. Why does life suck? Is because we're sucking. If we would stop sucking on things, life wouldn't suck.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that is the example of the pita, the
Okay.
one who is sucking. Do you know about the hungry ghost, the pita?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, the metaphysical
That's
representation of
okay.
them.
Well, no, it's not metaphysical. The description is metaphysical.
Uh-huh.
The experience is real and it's painful.
Okay.
Gives us the point of saying life sucks. Why does life suck? It's
Uh-huh.
because we're sucking through a soda straw, and you
Uh-huh.
can't quite get a Mercedes through that soda straw.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so life sucks,
Uh-huh.
right? And
Yeah.
all we have to do then is stop sucking on it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we stop sucking and become satisfied with the fact that we didn't get all of that stuff that we wanted and we're still okay, when you
Mm-hmm.
become that, now life doesn't suck anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But there is that I can't really blame it all on Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see that loser mentality in India. That they
Mm-hmm.
do have a more joyous. They do like to celebrate their Hindu gods, but in the West,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus on the cross. I mean,
Yeah.
that's enough example right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. You
Yeah.
don't see Jesus hanging on the cross with a big smile on his face, with a wink in his eye, or
Yeah.
any of that kind of stuff. Oh no, it's all about suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I wonder if that had any influence on why they chose to translate the word dukkha
Mm-hmm.
as suffering, where it
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't mean suffering. It just
Mm-hmm.
means satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can go up to anybody on the street and say, "Hey, I got some Buddhism here. Are you suffering?" And they'll say, "No, I'm not suffering."
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you ask them also, "Well, are you dissatisfied with life?" And they'll
Mm-hmm.
say, right. Now we're getting someplace. That's
Yeah,
real.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So why it's all about suffering? I don't know, because I really don't know anybody who's suffering right now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
I but I don't know anybody with Corona-19. So
Ah.
that in fact there is a level of suffering that's
Mm-hmm.
real,
Yeah.
and that is when we're below our bottom line. We're not getting the medical attention we need, or
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
we're inadequately clothed, or we don't
mm-hmm.
have enough food, or we have inadequate housing. So there is bottom line,
Yeah.
but but we can, with a little bit of wisdom, get above our own bottom line.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then once we get above that, there's still the dissatisfaction to deal with.
Right. But the mistake that a lot of people make is once they get above that bottom line and they still have dissatisfaction, they say, well, more and more
Uh-huh.
and more and more
Uh-huh.
and more.
They
Rather
keep
than
raising.
no,
Yeah.
right, right. So that's that whole idea of greed, and much of
Mm-hmm.
our society is built upon human greed,
Yeah.
rather than learning how to become satisfied with the way things are.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Especially
And
here in the West, I guess. Yeah.
uh, and so let's bring this one to a close. I think that we've gotten the idea
Yep.
with Anapanasati, and next time we'll go through a little bit more detail of it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so that we can see how things are put together. But the basic points is to keep breathing
Mm-hmm.
with right effort,
Mm-hmm.
keep smiling with
Mm-hmm.
right effort,
Mm-hmm.
keep remembering to have right effort, and
Mm-hmm.
you become a winner with your attitude changing. That's basically it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that you
Okay.
can come out of your suffering, and pretty soon you'll figure out, yeah, you're right, I can.
Yep.
I can throw
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stuff out. I can come back to this present moment, and we're good to go or to
Yeah.
stay.
Must say, I've been watching one of your other videos where you gave a student a few exercises, like when you're getting up, when you're sitting down, when you're opening a door, and touching things. So I've been trying that for the past few days, and it's almost like I'm going back to the feeling I had when I was at the retreat. So I haven't had that feeling in real life in quite some time. So indeed, this it's already very valuable.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're getting some value out of it. I was going to wait and then talk about that at a later time with you, but yeah,
Sorry.
keep that up and tell me all about it next time when you call.
Right, right. Thanks a lot. This has been amazing.
Yes, it's been good. I enjoy.
Mm. Thank you.
All righty. Bye bye.
Bye bye.